Hello and good evening, everybody out there. Welcome to our quarter one book club at the Dragonfly Arts Collective. I like to do these quarterly. It gives people time to read the book on their own time and not feel rushed. And it also gives me time to figure out what the next quarter is going to be about. So for this quarter, which ran from February until April, now we were doing 21st century literature or any book that was released after the year 2000. Our next book club, where the announcement for the new pick will be tomorrow, that's going to be an artist biography or memoir. There was a poll up. I recently took it down. We have a very clear winner on it. So I will be giving you the details about that. And we will be reading the next book through the end of July. So for the months of February, March, April, we were reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I was going to have two other people on this call with me, but I have not heard from them recently. So maybe by the time we get done with this housekeeping, they'll be able to get onto the call and be ready and everything. Um, I say housekeeping. I don't actually have a lot today because we've already done all the rest of our monthly meetings. We also have a monthly movie club and a monthly listening club where we watch a movie and discuss it, as well as listen to an entire music album and then discuss that. For the month of April, we watched the movie Parasite, and our discussion for it is still up online if you'd like to go listen to that. And for our listening club, we listened to The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. I realize I am a month behind on it. It was actually the 50th anniversary of it in March. Um, but those discussions are still online. As for this discussion, if you are watching online, you are more than welcome to write a comment into the chat, and I will be seeing those come up on my end. If you're watching this on the replay, you can. Sorry, I got a message. Um, if you're watching it on the replay, you can still comment on them and I will respond to them. If you are in our Facebook group, which you can see the link for it up in one of these corners here for the Dragonfly Arts Collective, I get notifications on those. So I will be able to respond pretty quickly. If you're watching on YouTube and respond, it takes me a little bit longer because I have to physically remember to check that, and I'm pretty bad about it. All right. Seems like technical difficulties are the reason why I am here right now. um, so our next monthly picks are going to be put up onto our Facebook group tomorrow morning, and you can comment on those. If you'd like to join our discussion live, we only have a couple of seats available for these live discussions, but we do open the discussions up to the chats. Yeah, those will be announced in the Facebook group, and that will be super fun. I look forward to discussing. I love discussing media. It's why I have these. Um, so let me do a little bit of background on our book. Whoop. I'm not going to read this entire thing. I might leave it up here for a little bit just so you guys can read it. This is actually the blurb online. So this was a book that was released in 2020, which is actually later than I think I initially thought it was released. I thought it was released earlier than that. Maybe I am wrong. No, I was correct. It is 2020. Um, it is probably what I would consider to be a fantasy book, and it's very, very fast to read. I have it at 304 pages. It was very, very quick to read, and it was a lot of fun. And Miguel's now on the call, so I'm going to go ahead and add you. Hi, Miguel.
Hello.
Um, I don't have. I'm having fun making these slides for our clubs,
Awesome.
but for book club, I was kind of just like, here are some of the covers, and some. These are the quotes that online said. These were the quotes that people liked the most.
There you go.
So I'm gonna go back and pull up some of my other things that I had going on over here.
You know what you said about it being a quick read? It's not because it's, I don't know if it's 300 pages is particularly short, but it's short chapters and you zip by because you want to find out. I don't know, you just want to keep going rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, the plot of this book is it's essentially a woman who tries to commit suicide and finds herself stuck in the midnight library, the space between life and death, and she gets to visit lives that were possible based on her choices. And I found myself every single time I was like in a life, just like, I will just read until the end of this life that she's experiencing when she goes back to the library. And then it'd be like 5 lives later, and it'd be like, oh my gosh, no, I have to go to bed. I have to get up early.
Yeah, it's definitely a page turner. And for those people that might be watching of a certain age, it's very much the same plot as a old Jimmy Stewart Christmas movie that we used to watch all the time called "It's a Wonderful Life," where
Yes.
he's like shown. I mean, his is not a series of lives, but it was one life. It was sort of like what life would have been like if he was never born, and but the same basic idea, and really really compelling, and you know, and at the end it was like really emotional. I had a lot of problem with the beginning because, as you say, it starts with somebody attempting suicide, which is kind of a downer. But I soldiered through the first, I don't know, how was that first couple three paragraphs? I mean, chapters,
Yeah.
and then once we got into the Midnight Library, it was yeah, it was definitely a page turner. I liked it. I highly recommend it.
It's funny that you brought up It's a Wonderful Life because when we were talking about our listening club and you were talking about The Wizard of Oz always being on TV,
Hmm.
It's a Wonderful Life is also something that I consider just like general knowledge because it had a royalty problem and it became free. So all television channels were just like, oh, we have this It's a Wonderful Life. We'll just put that on.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I never looked it up, but I don't even know if it was really popular when it came out because it was like
No.
in the 40s, right? Like right after World War II.
Yeah, it was not popular when it first came out. It became popular later on because
Oh, and you know what I remember? One of the things people didn't like about the movie was that the bad guy didn't get in trouble, right? That nothing
yeah,
happened to him. He was just sort of like off the hook, and Jimmy Stewart was a happy guy. But yeah, and you're right. I didn't realize they had royalty problems with it. I mean, it was like a famous director. Was it Billy Wilder? Is that right?
I have no idea. I have very limited knowledge of It's a
Yeah.
Wonderful Life.
Did,
I
did,
already
Wiz-
extended all of it.
did Wizard of Oz have the same problem that it had? It got played on TV all the time because there was some publishing problems.
I have
Or
no idea in that regard. Um, I we talked about it before. I think Wizard of Oz was more of a good selling point for color TVs, and that might have given it a lot more of a basis. I don't know. That would be something interesting to look into.
Wow.
Um,
But it was definitely on all the time, as was It's a Wonderful Life. But to be honest, I haven't watched It's a Wonderful Life for like 20 years, even though it was my favorite Christmas movie at the time.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, in the age of streaming, we don't have that.
Well, also, it's black and white,
Yeah,
right? And that's a tougher sell than it was back when, you know?
back in my day. Um,
Well, it wasn't like the
well, I
complete.
say that even for me because, like, I also watched a lot of black and white movies when I was younger and didn't really think about it that much.
Mhm. Yeah,
But back to this book.
yeah. Great book,
Yeah,
amazing book.
yeah, you liked it a lot?
Yeah, and I also liked how they handled the character's growth, even though the character is technically kinda in between a living person and a dead person. But,
Right.
it was not like, shiny happy, everybody's happy at the end. Um, but, um but it was like, what felt like real growth as, emotional growth, as a human being, you know?
Yeah.
And that's so weird that all this growth is happening. Well, I guess a lot of growth can happen to you when you're sort of in between life and death. But it was, because you I mean, unless it's a Jerry Seinfeld thing, everybody has to grow and change in most sort of, I mean, it's even a narrative, even though she's in between life and death, right?
Yeah, she's
And
definitely moving forward. Actually, I think that this book has character growth as like its central concept to it.
yeah, but it's all in her head, which of course it is for all of us. We're not getting
Right.
character growth from our calves, but it's it was just like really cool. And so, and as somebody who's gone through a fair amount of therapy over the course of my life, all that stuff is like that's real stuff. You could,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how much of it specifically I related to, but there's plenty of it that went, oh, geez, yeah, I had to work on that, or I'm still working on that. And yeah, just a great, great book. And it's just, it's hard to explain to people. I was recommending it to my buddy in Montreal. Well, hard to explain via chat, I guess, but it's just sort of like, it's like It's a Wonderful Life, and then, in Montreal, they never watched It's a Wonderful Life, and so after that, I'm kinda like, I'm gonna have to talk to you on the phone, I can't type this. But it's, I mean, how would you explain or is explaining the Midnight Library too much giving the story away, or are we
I
ruining it
think
for
up
people?
until a certain point, my description of it's what I said at the start. It's a woman who uh, attempts to commit suicide and finds herself stuck in the world between living and the dead, where she gets to look at all of her regrets and choose or see what her life would be like if she had made different choices.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, not all the lives were about regret, some of them were, but
No,
yeah, it was sorta like if you just made different choices, so that time that you know,
I think at the start of it, like the first few lives were all about things that she regretted doing.
oh,
And
that's
then
right, and then it went on from
yeah,
there. Yeah,
and then after that, it was all of the lives that you could have possibly like, she gets farther and farther from what she calls her base life.
yeah, and then one of them was some guy who found her dead cat, and then she decides to go out with him after all, right?
Yeah,
Um,
well yeah,
yeah, it became a little more random than just sort of regrets and stuff, but regrets is a really good place to start because that's where
yeah.
you would be when you passed away, is like, if you had regrets, you'd be dealing with it heavily right at
I
that point.
think, um, before we go further, I'm just
Oh,
going to put it out there of there are gonna be spoilers for this book after I think this point because we're I think both Miguel and I are, like, teetering on the edge of just being like, "Let's talk about this."
well,
So
I can
if you
waive.
haven't read it, just know that I think we both loved it, and I know that, Beckett, who's not here right now, also really, really loved it.
Mhm,
I think it's a great read, and I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of, lives that you wish you had
yeah,
and things
and
along those lines.
And you know what else? It's great thing about nonfiction is that when it's done well, it can be more true than half of the fiction stuff that's out there.
I
It's
think you
like a
flipped those.
fiction book. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have trouble with that. Dyslexia. Hello. But yeah, it, it's as a fiction book, that's the right term. It really, really rings true. And I love that about it. So, and have you read his other books? I have not.
I haven't, but his other books are actually nonfiction. He's a
Interesting.
nonfiction writer, and this was his, like, maybe it's it might be a mix. I think he's a journalist, and so it's kind of like a mix of nonfiction and fiction.
Interesting. So that's cool. His first fiction book. And as
I
it
don't
says
think
on
it's
the
his
covers.
first fiction book. I'm, like, trying to, like, look it up. It seems like he writes, like, children's books as well, and he
Oh,
has written, like, other novels, and nonfiction. He writes all over the place, it seems.
wow, that's very interesting. Wow.
Um,
So, yeah.
an interesting thing is so this book came out in 2020. In 2015, he actually wrote a memoir about his own dealing with depression.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
and it's called Reasons to Stay Alive.
Ha. There you
So I
go.
feel like this is almost like the fiction version. That being said, I've read nothing else by Matt Haig.
Yeah.
So, but I completely agree with you. I think that fiction absolutely is a fantastic way to explore situations without having those situations happen. I always say that my favorite genre is sci-fi because in sci-fi you can get so far away from reality that you can just turn the lens back on reality, especially humanity.
Yeah.
And a
No,
lot of the best philosophical discussions come from fiction and
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ursula K. Le Guin is one of my favorite authors, and she, like, even though there's dragons and it's magic, that's kind of just context, but only kind of sort of context. It's really um, about truth and philosophy and interpersonal relationship and how women get treated. It's just really a lot of it is just really, really interesting and deep stuff. But she's coming at it. And oh, by the way, there's dragons, right? Which I
it
think might
just
turn
makes
off
it
some
fun.
people. What's that?
It just makes it fun.
But
Uh,
yeah, but and then without I'm going to be a spoiler for an entire series of books that Ursula wrote. But I mean the Earth Sea started out as a trilogy and ended up being 5 books.
yeah.
By the final book, they just find out that the whole trade-off they made to do all this magical stuff was a bad deal. And it's not resolved, but it was clearly a very, very bad deal. They undid the deal, and that's when the last and fifth book ends.
Right.
So it's just like, and then as she grows as a, well, I don't know if she grows as a feminist, but like the women characters get stronger and stronger and stronger all the way through, right? To where their perspective by the last couple of books dominates the male's perspective, even though they're not in positions of power per se.
Yeah.
You know?
I am
But yeah,
going to bring us back to Midnight Library
yeah, yeah, yeah. We got to
'cause
leave Ursula. Sorry.
this is the Midnight Library talk, not the Earthsea talk. Um,
But
although I
anyway,
do
I'm putting him in that category of people who write fiction that's very, very true
I
and
mean, yeah,
real to
a
life.
lot of them do. I have an entire book club where I force my friend who really only thinks that nonfiction is um, valid, or she had that opinion 2 years ago, and she has changed her mind.
There you go.
um, yeah, a part of me is stuck on where to begin with this book because it's entirely about something that we all do as people, which is question what ifs,
Hmm.
and just about like, trying to figure out like there was like a mixed thing in it of like some of her what ifs were like, oh, this didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to. I feel disappointment about it. Time to go back to the Midnight Library. But when she does find lives that she likes towards the end, she doesn't feel like they're hers.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
it's like this weird mix of, yeah, you can just jump right into your perfect life, but you're still not going to feel like it's yours sort of deal. Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's another interesting thing about that, it's, um, I don't know how to articulate. So there was a character in there that's kind of stuck in the Midnight Library, and it seems like he hopes to never get out, right?
right.
And that he's kind of like, at least for me, as I was reading, he's kind of like a tragic figure. It's like, dude, you have to make a decision, right? One way or the other. And I think I don't know how much the main character, you know, grapples with that, but I think there's also a sense in the book that this can't go on forever. This is no way to live, even though it's really fantastical and it's amazing and you can try all this stuff. At some point you're hitting diminishing returns. And yeah,
Yeah, I think the farther she got from her base life, the more that she was like, "Oh, I do really like this life that I have, but it's not mine," sort of thing. Like you can't just jump into a different life and have it work out. Um,
yeah,
but also on the case of I think his name like Hugo or something.
the
The other
character.
guy, who has like a video store as
Oh,
his
the
library.
guy who wants to keep going?
Yeah, the guy that wants to keep going.
It's something like that. I can't remember his name, but yeah.
Yeah, he didn't try to commit suicide. He like got really sick, and so I feel like he doesn't want to go back, but he's continuing to move on. And it seems like the main character of the Midnight Library, Nora, just gets annoyed with him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, like she has one discussion with him and he's like, "Yeah, I've met tons of people that are doing this and we like sometimes meet up and we talk about this and their discussions." And every single time it makes it sound like she's up with him in like some of the other in between lives that we haven't really heard about, because we
Mhm.
really see like the first time where she's just like, "Well, this is interesting." And then she's like, "The last time that I met up with him," and it was just, like, almost immediate, like, they said hi, and she was like, "Ah, I'm out."
Oh, yeah, that's right. She, like, tapped out.
Yeah,
But
um,
that's one of the real strong allegories to It's a Wonderful Life because, once the Jimmy Stewart character is shown how different everybody's lives around him would have been if he was never born, then, he's basically sent to that, uh, fantasy world or parallel universe world by saying, things would have gone better if I had been dead. It was better. It'd been everybody'd be happier if I was never born, right?
right.
And so he kind of falls back in love with his old life by showing the alternative lives that, the alternative life singular that how life would have been if he hadn't been born, right? And I think something reasonably similar happens to Nora.
Oh,
You know?
yeah, no, as soon as you said it, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of the same."
Yeah, but
This is the same plot.
yeah, it's very, very different plot device in that, Jimmy Stewart's character dealing with one alternative life and where
Yeah,
Nora's by the end of the book, how many I mean, it seems like we're close to 20 different lives?
that we see, there's, like, a whole section in the middle where she just skims over everything that she's doing.
Oh, I forgot that.
So yeah, so she, does a bunch of I pulled it up, but I didn't have
So do you think the number's closer to 50?
oh, I think the numbers are, like, closer to, like, hundreds or
Oh,
200s.
wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't grasp it that it was that big.
Yeah, they just kind of, skim over a lot of them because you can't go visit every single life. It's
Mhm.
like, TV shows where people have to be doing something, but it's not really relevant to the plot, so you're not gonna see them doing it.
Yeah,
They just
yeah.
kinda disappear. Um, do you think a lot of her, because she's a philosopher at heart, Nora.
Okay.
Um, I say at heart, she's also a philosopher. She like has a degree in it, and she constantly is bringing up philosophy throughout it.
And in one of her lives, she had a PhD and she was at Cambridge, right?
Yeah, her perfect life.
There you go. Except, well, no.
I imagine, yeah, because she's writing like a book on Thoreau, who she talks about is her favorite um, philosopher.
Okay. Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's right.
yeah,
That's what she's writing a book on in her PhD Cambridge life.
right. And do you think that like something along those lines would take you out of it? But also, I want to bring up just like that sort of imagery of like bringing up Thoreau as like the sort of parallel. Why Thoreau?
Well, for you mean for the character, or why did the author do it?
Both. I mean, I assume if
Well,
the
I think
character does it, the author is behind it.
um, I think the Thoreau thing is often held up as an ideal, but I think generally, well, I can only speak for myself, obviously. I don't think it's a practical way to live in the world just by being so detached from it, you know?
Right.
And I say the word practical, it's like, ugh, I hate that word. But I think she's comes into this being less of a fan of Thoreau and in a healthy way, in a good way. And because I think and again, some of the details I'm not remembering. I think she kind of, my sense is that she over identified with him at the beginning and it was romanticized. And by the end of the book, that's she's dealing with that in a much more how do you say, mature, self-aware fashion,
Oh yeah, I think
less fangirlish.
I don't know a whole lot about Thoreau. My basic understanding of his thing is that all people are inherently good, and that if you essentially are self-reliant and work on yourself, you will also be good, and you can have freedom in your own independence.
Hmm.
That sounds right. Um, I think I hope I don't know. I'm not
I'm
very
gonna defer to
I
your
sh-
judgment on that because I don't know much about him. Other than
um
that, my daughter had a job working for the city of Concord,
here, let's look it up.
Massachusetts. My daughter had a job working for the city of Concord, Massachusetts, in the part of the things that she was doing sustainability projects, and Walden Pond was part of their. I didn't realize it was near Concord. I didn't get that
Yeah.
before at all.
Yeah, he's a Massachusetts Idol.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that's again the whole Thoreau thing is a point of where you see growth in Nora's character,
It feels
right?
like to me that she starts off with one belief, like interpreting him one way, and ends interpreting it like an entirely different way. I had to look it up. So, Thoreau is a self described transcendentalist. He believes in the individual's power to live an everyday life charged with meaning, and he has faith in self reliance over societal institutions, focusing instead on the goodness of humankind and the profound lessons it can learn from nature. Um, but the whole self-reliance and like you can be better through self-reliance of at the start of it, she wants to live with meaning, but she's only making choices that other people have made for her or that she thinks other people want her to make.
Mm,
So like a
hmm.
lot of the regrets in the book are like her letting people down. And those are like she's like, what if I didn't let this person down?
Hmm.
Including a terrible fiance who she realizes was absolutely like a great thing letting him go, or like letting her brother down in the band, letting her dad down by stopping swimming. And like it was only after a certain point where she started to make her own decisions that she started to see happier. Also, Australia, she let down her best friend by not going
Yeah,
to Australia. Like,
that was her sense of it. Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah.
was like the first lives. That was all it was. And like her growth is in learning that she needs to make her own decisions based on her own self and not to please other people. Um,
Although a lot of times she wasn't pleasing other people, but she felt worse
yes.
because she didn't do it right. Um, but yeah, I hadn't thought of that angle, but I agree with you that um, it's absolutely true, and it's a great way of talking about her growth through the book, and that she's making her own decisions and is less influenced by the expectations of others.
Yeah. I think that was a clear point of
Ah, go ahead. Sorry.
um yeah, the difference between just other shaping the life as you think others see you
Hmm.
versus, you know, doing what it is that you want to do. And I think that's something that we all as humans, and especially us as like artists, to tie it back into our whole arts community, is
Mm,
it's very easy to like pigeonhole yourself into like one specific description of art. And I mean, a lot of people I know are multidisciplinarians.
hmm.
That's the word. Um, but I spent the good chunk of my childhood and teen years and young adult life saying that I was a musician.
Mhm, mhm.
And the thing is, now I'm like, "Oh, I used to be a musician," and that, like, puts the thing on, and it makes it very difficult for me to get back into making music because I have,
Mm,
like, this label that I'm now have to live up to.
yeah. Oh my god, so you that's a very rich vein. How old is Nora when she, at the time of the suicide attempt? Was she early 30s?
I think she's late 30s. I wanna say she's,
Oh,
like,
late.
38-ish.
Okay.
37, 38.
Yeah. So that's so interesting. And so one of the parallel when you're saying that, one of the parallels of my life is when I came out of school, the last thing I wanted to do was teach music because the only advice my mom never gave advice, but the only advice she did give me is to never be a public school teacher like she had done for a while, right? But then I came around full circle to yes, teaching no public school, whereas in when I was in my mid 20s, it was very binary. Teaching is no, right? And I'm done with that. And then, about 20, 25 years into my sort of corporate job career, I realized that the mentoring and teaching that I was doing at my Silicon Valley job was the favorite thing of my favorite thing about that job, right?
Right.
And so it was having to find my own way in music and thinking it's a binary choice. I didn't, I one thing I would say to my 25-year-old self is like, no, your only choice as a music teacher is not to be a public school band director, because that's kind of what I thought, that everybody in the teaching program at the school I was at were all going to be public school band directors, and they were thrilled with this. And I'm like, yeah, I would pitch myself off, the astronomy tower, right? So that, but that took 20 years for me to come around to that, and that's a version of what Nora talking about, and that's what allowed me to move from the quote unquote corporate lifestyle to pursuing an art and doing multidisciplinary things within music, right?
Yeah.
And that's yeah. So gosh, I think that's a great analog to the artistic life.
Yeah. I,
Is
I
that-
mean, and she's a pianist as well, but I think it is like this mixture of she's made a lot of choices in her life and felt like it let people down, but also these are things that she has defined herself as that aren't necessarily true.
Mhm.
You're not like a bunch of very neatly put together boxes
Mm.
sort of things. And I think that's where she grows is it's
Mhm.
almost this thing of she believes that she's let every single person down, but in choosing to be her own self, she is actually helping others without her around in like the her favorite universe where she made a huge decision to go out with a guy earlier and is now like working the job that she wants, married to a very nice man with a child. And she's like, this doesn't feel like my life. But also, the people that she's let down are now like her piano student and her neighbor who had to
Mhm.
get put into an old folks' home because he can't take care of himself.
Which is part of the old life, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, she had a rock star life, right?
Yeah.
And
She had
then
a
there
rock
was
star
just
life.
without going into spoiling it for folks, but there was just
I mean,
one
we've already
detail of
kind of
her
done it.
old life. What's that?
We're already
Yeah,
past the spoiler
but I mean,
tag.
but you don't even need to say it. There was just one detail from her former life that was wrong as a rock star, and she was out of there.
Yeah.
And it did portray a rock star lifestyle in an accurate fashion, that it's like it's a job, right? It's not, all it's not easy. But um, all of it, she learned that all of that was less important than this one aspect of her former life. Did we
Yeah.
say real life or former life? What have you been saying?
So she calls it her base life.
The BASE.
Yeah. BASE. Yeah.
That makes it sound bad and negative, but I know what she means by it. Yeah, and so that's another. Well, have we already talked about that? That the as she got into these alternative lives, the more something significant differed from her base life, something that was important to her that maybe she didn't realize was so important to her, the more she was just like done, right? And in fact, in that one life where there was an issue with her piano student and her neighbor, I don't even know if she consciously left it to go back to the midnight library. She just popped out, right?
She said she could feel herself slipping back in,
Yeah, but it
and
was
she was
less.
upset about it.
Yeah, she was screaming at when she came out of it, like, right? And
Yeah.
so, but I think that is, yeah, that's very interesting.
I kind of got annoyed with her in those first few lives because it kind of made it seem like she was looking for the exact perfect life. And anytime something, and granted, like the things that were wrong were things like for the rock star life. Like it was like people very, very close to her were dead in different ways, and she's like, "Well, I'm out of this life." But she was very
Mhm.
quick to give up at like the quickest, like the earliest disappointment.
Well, and that's interesting. I think that's part of where the growth was. I think, however, whatever chronological age, let's say late 30s, right? Um, I don't think her emotional maturity had caught up with that. And I think in those first lives, she's kind of catching up to being however old she really is in an emotional sense.
Right.
And then she seems to kick into like, ugh, I may be misremembering this, but after those first chapters that you're referring to, that where you felt she was a little annoying, there's some growth in the middle of the book, right? Where she's sort of done with the early stuff, but we had to go through the early stuff because that was what was bugging her in the base life. You know what I mean?
Right. You have to get the big things out of the way before you can get like nitpicky.
Yeah,
And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that we just kind of skipped over where she's just jumping lives and being like, "Well, what happened over here?" Um,
yeah.
I'm surprised that there's not more books that are closer together because even when she left her perfect life, she was like, "Take me back," and they're like, "Well, the rule of the library is once you visit a life, you can never go back to the life if you leave it." And so after her perfect life, she's like, just one small minor difference. Like, I decided to put my hair up one day instead of having it down or something like that. And they're like, nope. Like, it's weird
Hmm.
that that life doesn't actually exist. And like, it doesn't like butterfly effect.
Oh gosh, I don't know that reference. The butterfly effect. What's that?
Oh, so the butterfly effect is essentially that a butterfly can flap its wings on one side and like um, the motion from the wing flap can cause, like, a tsunami. It's a movie that
Oh,
came out in, like, the '90s about, like, how very, very minor nuances just change the trajectory of their life drastically.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. Now that bit I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, did you have a favorite life of hers?
No, I thought it was I like the ending because that seemed really true, right? And so the ending, she wasn't back at her base life. It was her base life with one significant tweak. I don't remember that.
No, it was her base life.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I
But
think it was just directly her base life.
but
She went to her neighbor's door.
yeah. And so that to me felt true, but it wouldn't have felt true if she hadn't gone through that the first six or so where it seemed, kind of, not the most mature thing to be doing, but you needed to go through it. And then based on the growth all the way through, I think any other decision would have been a letdown for
I
me. But I also like towards, three quarters, two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through the book, I'm seeing that she's got to land in the base life.
yeah,
That
I kept
just,
saying base life. It's actually not base life. I am a
oh,
liar. It's
you
root
are.
life.
It's what?
It's she calls it root life. Mrs. Elm calls it the base life.
Oh, root life.
So she
Okay,
calls
like
it
a
root
root of a
life.
tree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because everything is branching off from that moment.
yeah. But so that was my favorite for her, and the thing that was another favorite for a different reason is the rock star life, um, sort of showing what to many people is an ideal, an unreasonable idea, and just showing the trade-offs. Like, I mean, they got into like how much friggin' publicity you have to do when you're in a position like that,
Yeah,
right? The percentage of the day that is publicity for people like Beyonce when they're on tour or Bono when they're on tour is non-trivial, right?
yeah.
And just little things like that were real. I really liked him taking that lifestyle down a peg, and it could be any kind of celebrity. It could have been a movie star. It didn't have to be a music sort of celebrity. But I really liked that he did that in what seemed like a really true fashion, and also did it in a way that is real. Like that's like if I traded with Beyonce, there would be a lot of things that were much, much better in my life, and there would be a lot of things that would annoy me. It's kind of like there's no job where you love all of it.
I think my favorite part about the rock star life is that she was dating a movie star
Yeah,
who
but
was very famous across all of her lives, and he just seemed like such a terrible, like, not a terrible person, just very annoying.
yeah, it was like there's not a lot there, meaning
Yeah,
that we project onto these people because of the characters that they play on the screen.
yeah.
But some people, there's not a lot of there. They look great on camera, right?
They're people behind the screens, and you're just hosting a personality onto them.
Yeah,
Um,
I did think that was funny, and that his was really immature emotionally.
yeah,
You know, I just, but she had idealized him too. It wasn't just that he was famous in all her lives. I think in her root life, she had idealized him, or there was,
yeah.
yeah, in a way. But
Uh,
yeah, that was really really well done.
um,
I like that. So I like that life. But even though my favorite was the going back to the root life at the end.
I guess my other thing is, like, if you had, like, to explore, like, all of the other things that you could be,
Hmm.
that you wanted to do when you were a kid, like, where would you find yourself? Like, would you not be a drummer? Would you be, like, a chef?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the answer is easy. It was just sort of, I remember being terrified when I was in school because I thought there's nothing I'm good at except drumming,
Mm,
right? And that's one of the things that led me out of music for a while, and while I did corporate jobs. But the leaving the corporate job and returning to music and teaching and drumming was sort of coming home, but was like always a thing.
so
Since I
you
could remember what a rock star was, it was like, "Oh, New York Dolls pink drum set. That's cool. I don't know why, but that, you know?
I'm so jealous of that. I'm
What the
still trying to figure out what I wanna be when I grow up.
but, it's another thing. So another point that I really strongly believe in is that it's not a done deal. I think every 8, 10, 12 years, you gotta kind of, make a significant chiropractic adjustment to the flow of your life, you know? That even if I had figured out there was a way to do music right out of school that could work for my personality, that it would have evolved a couple, three times since then anyway, right?
Right,
I have a friend who kind of evolved the opposite way of me. He always stayed in music and he still is. He's a composer for films and he's a curator for events at the Music Center, right? And Music Center is where, how do you explain Music Center to people not from LA? It's where the opera, musical theater, where the symphony
it's
used to
it's
be.
it's the music center. I think that is the just it's where most of, like, the classical music, so it's like, the Amundsen Theater, which is where a lot of, like, the musical theater comes through there, and also a lot of plays,
Yeah.
and then the opera's there, and, I mean, the symphony is there, it's, like, across the street, the Walt Disney Music Hall.
But they used to be right on the square and then they moved. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
But,
next to it,
but
so it's
anyway,
still walking distance. They all share the same parking lot.
so this individual, a buddy of mine, he had the same background that I did, which wasn't in a school per se, but he's sort of now doing kind of the same thing I did when I was in the corporate world, like sort of marketing communications, marketing design research, right? As like a side light with his other stuff. It's creative people he's met through his music that have noticed, hey, you're really good at this writing thing. Could you help us with this? You know what I mean? And
Right,
he's evolved the other way. But I think the important thing is that he evolved. You know what I mean? And that he's not like the same musician he was when he started his career as whenever he got out of school in his 20s or late 20s, mid 20s or late 20s. So I do think to I tell a lot of people, and especially my daughters, like, don't worry about having figured it out now. Do the thing that makes most sense right now, and then you're going to always course correct. Because sometimes the course corrections are forced upon you, and then in hindsight, it's like, oh my god, that was the best thing that could have possibly happened to me. Me being forced out of a position was like, at the time, I wanted to kill all those people, but right now, I'm like, God, thank God. right? That was just like the best thing that could have happened to me because I was stuck. So, you know, I I try to tell people who like they you don't know. It's like you're never gonna really know. Just follow the thing that seems the best and in tune with yourself and go and know that you're gonna course correct at some time. You have to.
Yeah, I really like that Nora is in her late 30s because it is that thing of like you can always course correct at any point in time. For like a book like this, it feels like in the past. Am I saying like the past? I mean, if this book was like written 10 years ago, it would probably be about a 20 something. But I
Mm.
think her age is like a huge playing point into like what makes this book good.
No, and I agree with you. And I was casting about. I really, when I asked you, really couldn't remember what her age was. I couldn't imagine she was younger than 30, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that, yeah, yeah, that I mean, there's risk involved in any of those changes at any point of your life. But I think the worst thing is to sort of calcify in a certain thing, right? Um, too early,
Yeah.
you know?
Um, it's something that like I struggle with mentally because I am in my 30s and like it does like hit this point where it's just like, boy, I feel like I should be like in a career path or I should be better at this thing. The thing is like I'm exactly where I am, which is technically exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah, that's interesting when you say career path because I think I meet more people that are artists who had to do what I did, which is just like, I know I want to teach drums. And then other things happened. Oh, there's a performing thing. And oh, I could write. And oh, I could do public speaking, all of the things which I love. And I think I don't like career paths
Yeah.
because it's sort of predetermined, and I have really good friends that like were on track absolutely for law school, and then something blew up on them, and law school didn't happen. They had what do you call that? A gap year where you take a year off
Yeah.
between,
A gap year.
and all of a sudden found the thing, but it was the thing for then, right? And then from that they grew to other places. But yeah, career paths, I think, are inventions of the 4-year university system. So they can plug you into their system and spit you out. But we're not here to talk about the 4-year university system. Having paid a significant amount of money for somebody I care about almost the most in the world, to go to one of those, right? I wasn't going to win that argument in my family, but I really think career paths are. Um, it's good to have a vision and a plan. I just hate the idea of career path because it just sounds like your career counselor in high school.
Yeah.
Well,
So
you should be a, a band school teacher. You're great at music and you like teaching. And I'm like, God, I'm gonna like, no way. Anyway.
I I come from a military family, which
Ooh.
military is a very clear career path. There's
Mm.
a form of progression there, and my brother works in the corporate business world where there's also a very forward progression on it, even though it feels really weird. Um, he recently got the senior tag onto his title, which
Mm.
just means absolutely nothing other than you've worked here a specific amount of time.
You can get a
So,
raise?
it's like one of those weird things of, like, I'm not having that same trajectory that, like, m my parents or my brother have, but at the same time, I think I'm happier than they are. So, it's
Yeah,
not everything, but money's nice. So,
yeah,
on
and I think, Nora is in a position to be much happier with kind of the same life she had before the suicide attempt, right?
It's true, but she still lost her job. Like, she still has to move forward into a new direction. The
Yeah,
difference is I think now she's seeing it as a new path as opposed to a wall that she has to
which
climb.
is showing growth on her part. And
Absolutely.
and the thing about growth is it always hurts, But yeah, yeah, and that's yeah.
I kind of wish there was a little bit more of an epilogue for it to see like where she went, but I realized that that would kind of diminish the point of the book.
Yeah, I could easily imagine being the author and thinking, "Hey, we could do 3 more chapters," and just going, "This isn't helping." Right?
Yeah, like her life 3 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be tough. And I think it's better left to our imaginations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. She
Because
can take any path. The possibilities are endless.
yeah. And what's interesting? She I wasn't thinking about this, but she's an artist. She's a music teacher.
Mhm.
She writes songs. What else does Nora do that's artistic?
I think that was really her main thing for art was
She worked in a
music.
record store, right?
Yes.
And
That's
a
how she
music,
got that's the job that she lost. She worked in a music store
yeah, music
selling sheet
instruments and sheet
music.
music, but not like a record store. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I we should have said that at the outset. The main character is an artist.
Yeah, she's an artist who also had an interest in science, and she wanted to explore that part of it.
Mm,
And she was an athlete for a while, so she could explore all of those possibilities, those routes.
yeah. And there's lots of people interested in science who were like, I mean, like The Edge from YouTube. Brian May from Queen has a PhD in astrophysics or something like that.
Ah,
And
I
he got that after Queen was big. He didn't come into Queen with that.
I tried to get a degree in astrophysics, and then I failed out of calculus and got delayed a year, and was like, you know what, music. But
Calculus
I still
versus
like
music.
physics. I still have like a lot of physics books and things like that, but
Yeah. But
not very good at math, just like the ideals.
yeah. Huh. But anyway, Nora's an artist.
Yeah.
I should have thought of that or should have led with that.
I
But
mean,
it's
we talked about her rock life,
mhm.
rock star life.
Which was not, not hugely removed. It was a band that she was in that
Yeah, that did
imploded,
have
and
a
she
record
re-imploded.
deal.
And they did have a record deal, right?
They were offered a record deal, and she didn't want to be a part of the band with the record deal, so she left the band saying that she would still write songs for them,
Yeah.
and they didn't take the deal because she didn't want to be a rock star, essentially. And I think she was also dating Dan at the time. She was dating her fiancé or ex-fiancé, and he didn't like the idea of her being a big music star, so she left for him as well.
Oh, is he the one where they had the pub
Yes.
somewhere in the country? Yeah.
Yes. So she delved into his dream, and it made them both unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, support your partner's dreams, but don't make them your own.
Yeah, but not at the expense of your own.
Yeah.
They need to be supporting your dreams too.
I dated a lot of musicians like myself because, musicians tend to be around other musicians a lot. Um, but my partner is a film person, and that is like the perfect like adjacent thing because
Mm,
we share a lot of cables, but we call them different things,
cables. What do you mean by cables?
like XLR cables or console tape, which was a weird one that
Connecting.
I discovered.
Okay. What
In
was that last
film,
one? Console? What?
console tape, so like the tape that you put onto like a mixer to like write
Oh
what
my
it
gosh.
is.
You're talking about magnetic tape. Yeah. Okay.
It's not, it's paper tape.
Wow.
It's called
Okay.
paper tape. It's because like the way it's designed is like so that you can pull it up and it doesn't pull anything off underneath it.
Oh.
I've never used
Okay.
magnetic tape on it, but yeah,
Mhm.
like paper, but I always called it console tape because it's like what we use to put things on. And it's also what it's called on the inside panel. Anyways, this was a whole thing where I got very confused once while talking to somebody, and it turns out I knew exactly what they were talking about just by a different name.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that happens a lot. But it is interesting because I'd never spent a lot of time around people in film because I grew up in the Bay Area and then in Portland, and there's not a big film scene. But being here, I'm realizing the Venn diagram. There's a significant amount of overlap
Yeah.
there, and but it's also good to have your own territory
Yeah.
where it
No, I
doesn't
think it's,
completely overlap.
I know some people make that work, but I think it is very important to like, at least just for me, of they're close. I understand what he's going through,
Hmm.
but we're not stepping on each other's toes. So
Yes. Yeah. There's space,
yeah.
breathing room. Hey, do we have a hard stop coming up?
We are coming up on an hour, and I do try to keep them at an hour.
Okay.
So if you want, we can do any final thoughts.
Well, I highly recommend the book. I had forgotten that she was an artist, and I think it's a great example of nonfiction being more real. I'm sorry, fiction being more real than nonfiction. So I think that the book for me just rang true like a bell.
Yeah, I
Rebecca?
I love reading fiction. I have that exact same thought most of the time of like, oh, this is allowing me to like step out of my life while re-evaluating my life. It's more feelings based
Hmm.
than nonfiction. Um, that being said, our next book is nonfiction.
Oh,
So,
which is it?
so I haven't announced it yet. It's tomorrow morning.
Oh, this
So
is the I voted on that.
artist, yes, you did. Artist memoir biography. The
I
poll
only
is no
voted.
longer up.
Oh, say it again.
The poll is no longer up. I took it
Oh
down
yeah.
earlier today. We had like 8 votes on it, which is a surprising number for my polls on this.
Oh, okay. And what's interesting is that I voted purely on this is the book I've been wanting to read for years and I keep forgetting about reading it.
I'll
So
be honest, I don't remember what you voted for,
well then
but I
I,
do know which one won. So,
okay. Well, there you go. We're gonna leave the suspense and call it a day on that note.
yeah, so thank you for joining us out there, and hopefully you read the book and hopefully you got as much from it as Miguel and I.
Yay.
And we'll talk to you on the next one.
Thanks, Rebecca.
All right. Night, everyone.